Hello everyone and welcome to MIT Sloan Alumni Online. Every month we bring you the latest breaking news, cutting edge research, groundbreaking ideas, and school updates from MIT Sloan faculty and alumni. Today we have Bryn Panee Burkhart joining us for a presentation on intelligent networking. Bryn is the Senior Associate Director of Alumni Career Services and an alumni career coach here at MIT Sloan. Bryn came to Sloan in 2006 and has been our dedicated alumni career coach since 2012. Bryn has been a great partner to us in alumni relations by sharing her expertise with the alumni community. You can see up on the screen a number of other careers webinars that Bryn has led for MIT Sloan Alumni Online. You can also view these on our YouTube channel. So lots of great advice, lots of great content. So Bryn, we appreciate everything that our colleagues in the CDO do. We're glad to have you with us. I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
All right, thanks so much, Greg. Hi, everybody. It's good to be with you again for another career webinar. So I'm going to dive right in because I have a ton of content to cover and I want to make sure that we get to questions as well. I created this webinar because networking is such a daunting subject for so many people. And frankly, it gets a bad rap in my opinion. And I think it's because people don't know how to do it. They don't know how to structure networking. So that's what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to give you a specific structure for how to approach networking in a smart and practical way, from how to even organize and communicate with contacts, to acquiring new contacts, to running efficient and effective networking meetings. So by the end of the hour, you should have a clear understanding of how to network confidently and intelligently. It shouldn't be as daunting, and you're also going to know how to approach networking not only in a job search or a transition, but also throughout your entire career. Because if there's one thing I know for sure, it's that networking is essential to your lifelong career management. But what I often see from alums and from others that I've worked with is that most people think networking is just a box to be checked when they are in the job search. So I need a job, therefore I'm going to network, and that's going to increase my chances of getting closer to a job. So that view of networking, frankly, sets it up as being more of a means to an end or a hurdle to overcome. Now, I am going to try and advance to my next slide here. When I talk to students and alumni about networking, what I mostly get when I ask what comes to mind when they think of it is things like, it's exhausting, it's draining, I'm an introvert, so it's terrifying, it's begging for a job, it's schmoozing, it's painful to put myself out there. So I've heard all these things and I get it. But here's where I want to start tonight, guys. There's a very simple truth, and here is what it is. The perspective you take about something is going to make it true for you. So if you think networking is exhausting, then you're going to approach it from that place, and you're likely going to find it to be very exhausting. So how you view something is often going to inform how you approach it and then how you experience it. Now, another simple truth is that each of you has the power to make a conscious choice about how you view any subject. Now, that's kind of a mind-blowing thing maybe, or eye-opening thing. So in this case, we're obviously going to keep our focus on networking, but it really does apply to any subject. So actually, if you think about other areas in your life where you might be stuck, I would suggest trying to see if you could shift your perspective and choose to take another viewpoint. And that's what we're going to do tonight. I want to give you another view of networking. My hope is that by even putting the word intelligent in front of the word networking, I've already begun to open up your eyes to a different kind of perspective of what networking can entail. So here's what I would like to offer you as a perspective of networking. So networking is simply having conversations or meetings with people where you're going to learn information by asking questions and for advice, okay? You're also going to offer to be of help to that person, which makes networking inherently relational and reciprocal. So yes, you're asking for information and advice, but it's not just about taking. You're also going to ask if you can reciprocate and be of help to them as well. So there's a give and a take. Maybe that person doesn't need anything now, but you're setting it up so that they can definitely reach out to you in the future. That's a really important shift, I think, for those of you who might primarily think of networking as begging for a job or using people or schmoozing, because you're not using people if you're also offering to be of help to them, right? And it doesn't even have to be career help. It makes networking relational versus kind of transactional. It's about getting to know people over getting a specific job opportunity. So it's more authentic, it's more genuine. And to that point, I should add, that typically your conversations and meetings are not going to be with hiring managers and recruiters. So you should never, when you're networking, expect people to just know of jobs for you. Most often the people that you're going to be speaking with are not going to be assessing your background against a particular skill set or a hiring situation. And they might not even be in the position to evaluate, your abilities. So networking is about planting seeds for roles that might appear down the line or are in what I call the hidden job market. I'll talk about that in just a second. So patience is the name of the game here, which is why you want to build and leverage your network continuously throughout your career and not just wait until you need it. Now, when you network to get advice and information versus a job, and when you're offering to be of help, you gain allies who are willing to champion you in your search and will keep you top of mind when they hear of opportunities for which you might be a fit. So now that brings me to that hidden job market. Most executive level opportunities are not posted online. So those networking meetings and conversations are really critical for tapping this invisible job market. So think about it. When a hiring manager has an open position, perhaps in the past you've done this, you're hiring, the first thing you probably think is, who do I know who can do this job, right? And then you put feelers out to your network. So decision makers tend to look to their networks first for suggestions and referrals before they formalize the process and put a posting online. And frankly, most senior level postings don't ever make it online. So this means you must engage in face-to-face activities in order to get on the radar. So I want to invite you to think about networking as being these things, where it's ongoing, relational, reciprocal. It makes for much easier lifelong career management when you're actually staying engaged with people. And in the job search, it certainly leads to finding opportunities that are better aligned with your strengths and priorities. So I've worked with many alums who've been able to get the inside scoop on roles that were in development, or been contacted for roles that have been created because they were still top of mind from someone that they met with. And I've even worked with a couple who had jobs created for them because they impressed the heck out of somebody. So I've said this before, I think successful careers are built on relationships. Your ability to effectively navigate your career is largely going to depend on how successfully you build, engage, and maintain your network. Okay. So moving on, before I give you your intelligent networking roadmap, and because we're going to discuss applying the principles of intelligent networking for a job search, I have to hit the pause button. You might have recognized this slide. This is from my very first career webinar that discusses how to effectively prepare yourself for a transition or a job search. It's called Navigating Your Career at Any Age and Stage. And as Greg said, it's available on their channel, and it's also on our Alumni Career Resources site. So I'll hope that you'll take a look at it there. So here's the deal. You're going to get much farther with your intelligent networking if you do what I call groundwork, grounding yourself first. And this requires self-reflection. Most people skip over this part because it's really hard to do. People just want to kind of go, go, go. And instead, what I'm asking you to do is stop and do some thoughtful preparation first. So in every webinar I've done, I've said, I want you to come from a place of intention and strength, intentional career management versus being reactive or passive. So to quickly review the groundwork in this webinar, here's the gist. You're going to make 2 lists. Each of these circles represents 1 list, and each of these circles also represents the area of a job search that you can actually control. So if we start with the red circle, this is going to be what I call your required desire list. So what are the things you need that are non-negotiable, and what are the things that you would like to have? They're like nice to haves in your next role. This is not about the work. It's actually about the things that are going to make up a satisfying work-life flow. So we're talking about geography, commute, compensation, culture, scope of the role, size of the role, autonomy, flexibility, all of those different things. What's going to be important to you as you look to your next opportunity? Consider and set these parameters for yourself and then prioritize them. Next, you're going to move to this blue circle and clarify your core competencies. So I want a list of your strengths, of the skills, the knowledge, the attributes that you bring to the table. I have a series of questions in the webinar that will help you flesh out this list. And this groundwork enables you to be purposeful because you're actually consciously choosing, back to that idea of conscious choice, the parameters around which you are prioritizing your job search, as well as the strengths you want to lead with moving forward. And it's then that you can get to this green circle. This is what you can't control, right? You can't control the market and the opportunities available in the market. But if you know what you want to do and want and need, and you know the strengths and skills you bring, then you have a better chance of getting to the sweet spot right here. Okay, and I love this because it can be exciting. It can open up opportunities that you've not previously considered. So this groundwork is the basis upon which you're going to move forward. You're going to develop a career narrative or a pitch, however you like to look at it. We'll talk more about that later. And you really want to have a narrative to anchor you before you go into your networking meetings. The narrative may change once you start having these conversations, but you need to have some sort of plan first in order to network smartly. If you skip this process, I guarantee you will probably wind up being frustrated, disappointed, perhaps delaying progress in your search. So thanks for indulging me. I couldn't move forward without addressing this very important piece of your preparation and groundwork. Okay, and this information again is on our Alumni Career Services website, and it's also on the YouTube channel for MITSAU. All right, so now I present to you a roadmap that's going to guide you through the steps of what I call intelligent networking. Here's where we're going. You're going to start by organizing your network. Then you'll communicate a tailored message to different segments of your network. You're going to get into adopting a networking mindset. We'll talk about that and about readiness. Then you'll conduct efficient 20-minute informational meetings. All throughout, you'll keep expanding your network and getting additional contacts. And then you will continue to stay engaged throughout your career. Now, essentially, these 6 blocks are the steps you would take in order to carry out a network job search. So we're going to drill down on the details of each of these blocks in the coming slide. And I am going to, talk about it through that lens of doing a networked job search. Now, I want to point out, intelligent networking in a job search does not place a lot of emphasis on job boards. So there's a place for that in a job search, of course. Job boards are going to tell you what companies are hiring and growing and what roles that they're looking at. But here's the deal, you guys. You cannot conduct a job search in a vacuum. Okay? People hire people. You've got to get out there. You can only spend so much of your time hiding behind your computer and applying to job boards and postings that you see online. Face-to-face contact is really the only way you're going to be able to tap that hidden job market. All right, so let's dive in with organizing your network. So the key to networking is starting with who you know, and I promise each one of you has a network. And I want you to begin by curating that network, okay, and getting the integrity of your network down. The most natural place to look here is LinkedIn. It is, the world's largest professional networking platform, but frankly, it's also a virtual Rolodex now. I'm sure most of you keep professional contacts on LinkedIn. But what I want you to do is look at your first degree connections. And for those of you who have, in the hundreds, you probably need to download them into a CSV file. You can find that in the privacy and settings section of LinkedIn. There's a section that says download your data. And again, I do have a 90-minute LinkedIn workshop from last year's alumni reunion that's on our Alumni Career Resources site that walks you through all of this in detail. So you might want to check it out. But here's what you're going to do. You're going to look at all your connections and you're going to scrub them using the favor test, what I call the favor test. So my approach here is quality over quantity, all right? And I want you to ask of each of your connections, is this someone I would be willing to do a favor for, and introduce them to someone in my network? And also, is this someone I'd feel comfortable reaching out to and asking them to do me the favor of introducing me to someone in their network? If the answer is yes to both of those questions, you keep them. And if the answer is no, then you remove them. They're not going to see that you've done this, okay? So what I want you to do is really get the integrity of your contacts down, all right? Now, you're going to kind of, well, after you do that, you're going to add new connections. So as you scrub, you're inevitably going to be thinking of, who am I not, I should be connected to these people. And I want you to think about adding new connections using these 4 buckets. Your family and friends. Yes, you can have, you can be linked with family and friends. They have professional contacts and they surely would pass the favor test. Shared work experiences. So who are those colleagues, the vendors, clients, current and former peers in the industry, right? That's a no-brainer. Alumni connections, of course. So Sloanies that you went to school with or other institutions that you might have attended. And then finally, your volunteer and community connections. So those are really your day-to-day contacts, your neighbors, the fellow parents of, your kids' friends, people that you worship with or work out with. I want you to start here because LinkedIn says these are really your most powerful connections, okay? So add any missing connections with this in mind and request to connect with a personal note, right? So we're keeping that relational component of networking front and center. So it can just be a short, quick note. The important thing is that everyone who remains a first-degree connection passes that favor test because, in theory, intelligent networking involves reaching out to everyone who is a first-degree connection at some point. Not all at once, and depending on how well your networking conversations go, you might not end up tapping everybody, but the point is that you may very well communicate with all of your first-degree connections at some point, okay? So once you've got a handle on, and I didn't even click here, we're looking at who you know. Once you've got a handle on your first-degree connections, you're going to organize them. So maybe according to those 4 buckets, but I'm guessing you could probably get a little bit more granular based on the results of your groundwork, right? Maybe you now know you should organize them by geography or industry or company or functional role. The bottom line is you're going to want to create some way to categorize your contacts based on what your goals are. And that's why, again, that groundwork is so essential to do first. After that, you're going to look at who your first-degree connections know. So basically, you're looking at who are my second-degree connections. And the goal is to figure out who knows someone you might want to get in front of. Maybe they work in one of your target companies, or maybe they're in your target industry, or they have a cool functional role that you want to learn about. So to do this, you're going to look at your advanced people search on LinkedIn. You can actually click a button to see your second-degree connections, only your second-degree connections, and then you can further filter on them by location, industry, company. I don't think you could do keyword. So take a look at those fields. But again, this is covered in my LinkedIn webinar. Now, after looking at who you know and who they know, the next step is prioritizing your outreach because, as I said, at some point, you're likely going to be messaging all of your first-degree contacts. You're going to start first by reaching out to those you know well with more closer ties, right? Or some people who you might deem to be low-hanging fruit. And you'll do that first before you progress out to first-degree connections you're not in close contact with, or those who might be kind of heavy hitters and you want to save later in your search. We're going to talk about messaging next because that might inform how you prioritize your outreach. Now, obviously, it's going to be important to have a system to manage your contacts, to track them and stay organized. I'm actually going to show you an example of an alum's contact sheet, but really some of the tools that you might want to consider: Excel, super easy, Google Docs. I've also had a few alums recommend Jibber Jobber, and HubSpot has a free CRM tool. So maybe take a look at one of those 4 options as you look to kind of categorize and organize your network. So let's summarize here, because I know I'm going quickly and covered a lot. You're going to clean up your network and add any missing connections. You're going to organize and categorize every connection. You're going to look at your second-degree connections and who you want to request an introduction to. And you're going to want to prioritize your outreach. And all of this will be recorded on your trustee tracking system. So I mentioned, let's see if we can move forward, that I have an example just for a visual. This is an alum, this is a Google Doc, so super simple. It doesn't have to be, very complicated. As you'll see, the first column is, I took out names for the sake of privacy, so you don't see the names, but he's just looked at how he knows them, the association, and has notes and contacts and the last date of contact. What I do love, if you look at the bottom of the screen here in the different tabs, his first tab is that groundwork that he's done. So he knows what he's, how he's anchoring himself. He also has a subsequent activity tracker and a research tab as well. But this is just a really simple way to set up a contact tracker. So let's move on to messaging, okay? Keep going and, okay. Now, as I said, in theory, you want to be prepared to communicate with all of your first-degree connections, everyone in your network. And when you reach out, I'm thinking emails, but of course, in this day and age, some people prefer text. You could even call people, so it really depends on your individual relationship with that person. You're going to create 3 types of messages. The first message is just a general update email that typically will go to family and friends and those who don't have any known ties to your target. And the purpose of this is just to give them a short update on what's happening in your career and what you're planning to do next. So you're going to use some elements of the groundwork that you used in the narrative that you created, and then you're going to ask them to keep you in mind in case they know of anybody who might be a resource in your search. So I have just a little sample here I'll read you. So I'm starting to explore new ways to leverage my product management expertise in a smaller, more nimble tech company in the Bay Area. I'm open to any ideas or learning about any contacts you have that might help me move closer to my goal. Right? So really nice, simple ask. And of course, making sure to heed that reciprocal component of networking. You also always want to offer to be of help too. So if I could ever be of help to you, don't hesitate to ask, or please let me know if I can do anything for you. And the reason that you send this general update email with no known ties is because you never want to assume that someone you know and trust is unable to help you. Someone could end up yielding a vital piece of information that could transform your job search. And most people are not going to be carefully curating their LinkedIn network like you are, so you never know who someone really knows. I actually have some really good stories about this, but we don't have time for me to share them. So next, I'm going to move on to the second type of email. This is an email to your first-degree connections who might be at companies or in the industry or geographic area where you're targeting. And because these first-degree connections are aligned with your targets, the purpose of this email is to ask them to meet with you. So again, you would kind of give that narrative. I'm starting to explore new ways to leverage my product management expertise, blah, blah, blah. Would you be willing to spend 20 minutes with me in the next few weeks so I can learn about your experience in this industry or specifically at this company, right? Or it could just be more casual. If you're open to it, I'd love to take 20 minutes and brainstorm some options with you as I seek advice and information in my job search. Really short and sweet. And of course, you'll close with the offer to be of help as well. Now, the third type of email that you're going to send is for those where you found a second-degree connection that you want to meet with, that's in your target, industry, company, geographic area, whatever, but there's not a need to meet with the first-degree connection. Although, of course, you may offer to do so, and in some cases, it might make sense for you to do so. But the purpose of your email is to ask for an introduction. So remember, these people have passed the favor test, so this should not be a stretch. So an example of how this could sound as well, again, you'd use your narrative about moving to the Bay Area, and then you'd say something like, I noticed you have a first-degree connection on LinkedIn with Joe Bob, who's working in the industry I'm interested in pursuing. Would you consider asking if he'd be willing to do a short informational meeting with me? Thanks for your assistance as I begin to think about my next professional steps, and please let me know if I can return the favor, right? So just something short and sweet. Now I'm giving you these examples because I want you to kind of hear the flavor of how it sounds, but for more inspiration and ideas around content, I do want to direct you to this website called themuse.com. I really like this website. And in particular, this 28 key email templates has templates and actual, examples of emails for all these situations I just discussed, as well as many more. They haven't done a new one for 2019, which is why I'm still using the 2018 version. So I think it's important for you to kind of always be genuine and use your voice, but certainly take a look at this article because it will help you figure out how to structure those emails. And I know structure is important here so that it's not as daunting. Now, a final word on this, because I know oftentimes when I'm talking to alums and giving them this advice, a lot of them, particularly people who are getting back in the job search after a long career break, are really hesitant about reaching out to people with whom they've not spoken in years. So here's what I say to that. Have these people who you know and trust because they passed the favor test, have they reached out to you, in the years since you've seen them, if it's been years? And if they did, would you be happy to help them, right? So I guess what I want to say to you is it really is okay to resurrect old relationships. Just ask yourself, if I heard from them, what would I want to receive from them? And just use that when you're crafting the note. All right. So we're about to jump into how to structure efficient, effective networking meetings. But before we do that, I just want to nail down these goals of networking. I want you to know what you're there for. Okay, so let's clearly define the goals of your networking conversations and meetings. So first of all, you are there to learn new information and share information about you. The point of the meetings is not for you to give this long, detailed overview of your background. It is not all about you. It's a chance to get advice, feedback, maybe some redirection on your job search. But you're also there to listen and learn new information that can help you. Another goal of networking meetings when it applies to a job search is to ask them to refer you to people who might be helpful to you or even to whom you might be helpful. So the more people you know, the more your name is getting circulated, the more you're on the radar when people come across opportunities, right? So go back to that idea of the invisible job market, the hidden job market. Your chances of being connected to a great opportunity, maybe even a great person, only increase when you expand your network. So you always want to use the opportunity to ask, who else should I be talking to? Okay. And that's really, where things get going. There was a study done in the early 2000s around, I'm using LinkedIn terms, second degree connections. I guess they're connections that are once removed from you, right? And this study confirmed that in fact, your second degree connections, or once removed connections rather, are actually more likely to help you in a job search. They're arguably more powerful because they don't have any preconceived notions about what you can and cannot do. They don't have a set idea about your abilities. They don't even know you. So you really have a chance to show up as a new person and present yourself from a powerful place. So asking your contacts for introductions, specific introductions or for new referrals is really critical to getting traction in your job search. Now, if you approach your networking conversations strategically and relationally, and if you're impressing people, then you're going to get allies who are going to go to bat for you. They're going to forward your resume or your LinkedIn profile to others. They're going to check internal listings at their company to see if there's opportunities for you there. They're going to pass you along to other people. They're going to contact you later when something comes up and they think you might be interested. They're going to recommend you for project or contract work. So a surefire way to get these allies is, again, I'm starting to sound like a broken record, I know, be helpful in return, okay? When you offer to be of help to them, then you're going to acquire allies. So it's reciprocal, it's give and take. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you can actually be helpful when I get into networking meetings, okay? So that's what we're going in for: advice, information, referrals, and thereby acquiring allies. So now let's review. As a result of curating your network and messaging to your first degree contacts, you've now lined up meetings with people that you know, and maybe even some people that you don't know. Okay, so let's think about meeting somebody. In a networking meeting, you're going to be learning about and observing someone's skills as they apply to the job they do, and you're also going to be evaluating how they act in a professional setting. All right, so if we turn the tables here and look at how that applies to you, your networking meetings will be an evaluation of your interpersonal skills and your executive style, just as much as, even more so than really your technical skills and abilities. So here's how you want to come across in a networking meeting. So strategic, you want to know why you're there and what you want to accomplish. Organized, you want to manage your meeting well and keep a close tab on topics and on time. You want to be positive. You want to have an upbeat tone. You want to use, good language, overall just good energy. You want to be gracious, really appreciative and grateful for the time that's being spent with you. And then once more, reciprocal, right? You have to offer to be of help as well. So if you've been successful in your career thus far, I'm betting that you've probably already proven your capacity for doing all of these things. And doing that groundwork and really knowing and getting focused on what you want to do next is also going to help you get into this mindset. You really want to approach your networking conversations from a place of strength and purpose. So to that point, let me talk just a second about readiness. If you think that you're not in a place where you can genuinely exhibit all of these qualities, I'm going to say that you're probably not ready to dive into networking meetings yet. So transition is difficult, depending on the nature of the transition or the cause of the transition. There can be anger, sadness, grief, even shame around transition. I've sat with, hundreds of people in transition. I know this to be true. I've experienced it myself. So what I want to do is just normalize this for you and tell you that, all those emotions are really natural, typical responses to transition. But also know that most everyone at some point in their career has been in a transition. So it's okay to be that way, but you can't go into these networking meetings being negative or critical about your former employer or your situation, because that's going to affect your chances of getting new contacts, acquiring allies, being passed along in that hidden job market. So my advice is, if you're not ready, okay, just take some time. You're going to want to just get a little distance from it. So lean into it, process it, don't repress it. And what I found is that oftentimes with a little distance, you get to be a little more clear on what is actually true and what's not true for you and about your situation. So when you can actually approach that groundwork I talked about earlier with some energy behind it, maybe even some optimism behind it, when you feel like you can talk about your situation in a matter-of-fact tone, right? Positive tone, but matter-of-fact, then I think you're going to be ready. So readiness is key, and you really want to adopt this mindset before you get into meetings. Now, I have a 5-step plan for intelligent networking meetings. And I'm going to use, I don't know if you can see the bottom of my slide deck, because I sourced this from a great book called The 20-Minute Networking Meeting by Marcia Ballinger and Nathan Perez. I don't know if you can see it. I can't, because I've got a ribbon on the bottom of my screen. But I do want to call this out and give them the props for this structure that I'm about to cover and share with you. If you want to get the book, it's short, easy to read. I would recommend getting the executive edition. They have a couple of different editions for new college grads and things like that. So you want the executive edition. So I feel like this is a great, effective, efficient structure, and it's gotten some good feedback when I've tested it on alums. Now, this model obviously works best face-to-face, but it can also apply to both a phone or a video call. So why 20 minutes? Now, I think one of the reasons people hate networking so much is because oftentimes networking meetings are way too long and they're too unfocused, right? Everybody feels like their time is wasted. So think about it this way. Everybody meeting with you is giving you the gift of time. time that could be spent on, billing clients or completing important work projects, getting other things done. Time is valuable. And if somebody's going to spend an hour with you, then that's going to delay other personal or professional responsibilities that are then going to get pushed to later in the day. So 20 minutes is actually a really smart way to approach this. Let me just walk through the 5 steps of a 20-minute networking meeting. So it starts by making a great first impression for about 2 to 3 minutes. Then you give a 1-minute great overview. That's your career narrative right in play. You have a great discussion between 12 and 15 minutes. You do a great ending and wrap up in 2 minutes, and that's the 20 minutes. After that, you do what they call great follow-up. So that's after the meeting ends. So again, I've had some alums test this out with great success, and they've told me, 20 minutes really is enough time to exchange some pleasantries at the beginning, to have a productive conversation around one's background and goals, and then to close the conversation promptly. So remember the goals we talked about earlier. It's advice, information, and referrals. It's not giving this long, detailed discussion about your work history. Someone's giving you the gift of time, so you really want to use it wisely. So let's go over each of these 5 steps in detail, and just let me get a little hydration. I talk so fast. All right, let's start with the first impression. So the saying goes, you never get a second chance to make a first impression, and that is certainly true. So here's what you're going to do in those 2 to 3 minutes that you have. First of all, you want to arrive at your destination early so that you're not stressed and you can come across as calm and steady. Remember that your first impression begins the moment you arrive at the office or at the coffee shop, wherever you're meeting. And every interaction you have can affect the success of your meeting. So if you're frazzled because you arrived late, or if you're short or kind of brusque with the person at the front desk, that could get passed along and they can share that information. So get yourself in that positive mindset before you even get out of the car or off the subway or train or whatever, and just use it from the get-go. Use that energy. And to that point, I want to mention a TED Talk that I often recommend to clients I'm working with who are interviewing or going into any high-stakes situation. Some of you may have heard of Amy Cuddy. She's got a very highly rated TED Talk called The Power of Body Language, and she's got a important kind of power pose that she recommends people do to get themselves pumped before they go into any meetings. So take a look at Amy Cuddy's her TED Talk. You'll learn about her power pose, and I suggest you do that before you arrive to get yourself in that positive mindset. Next, you're just going to express thanks right at the introduction, right? That person is giving you the gift of their time. So, you want a firm handshake, eye contact, a nice smile, and you're just going to say, it's great to see you again, Jim. Thanks so much for taking the time to meet with me, right? Or nice to meet you, Carol. Thanks for your time, however it works. Now, there's always going to be a short period of chit chat, right? As you're kind of settling in. And so rather than talk about weather or traffic or sports, highlight mutual connections that you might have. It's a really nice bridge, particularly if you're meeting with somebody that you don't know. So it's perfectly fine to say, I just want to tell you, Carl says hello, and we used to work together at Wayfair, and he was one of the best colleagues I've ever had, or something like that, right? Or, perhaps we have some mutual connections at Bitcoin. Do you know this person or that person? So take the time to highlight those connections. So a few minutes, right, 2 to 3, we've got going on here. A couple minutes of chit chat is fine, but then you really want to get down to business. So remember that you are making an impression on how you conduct yourself professionally. So you want to lead with your professional self versus your personal self. And this is often where networking meetings go off the rails, because the person who called the meeting starts taking their cues from the person who granted them the meeting because they want to be deferential, right? And then that person who granted the meeting starts to think, what am I doing here? Like my time is being wasted, and why am I running this meeting now? So, that's why these meetings become unfocused and they are too long, and why everybody thinks they're a waste of time. So you first just want to tell your contact, you're only going to take 20 minutes of your time, and then you're going to lay out the agenda. So here's some ways to do that. You might say something like, I want to be respectful of your time, Anne, and I'm not going to take more than 20 minutes. I'd like to give you a brief sense of my background and then get your perspective on a few things that relate to my job search. Right? Sound good? Or, this should be brief. I'm just going to share a quick overview of my background and share a few questions that relate to my job and ask a few questions that relate to my job search. So this sets the tone of the meeting and shows that your overall approach is both focused and organized. It also shows you're not afraid to lead, right? So to my point earlier about readiness, confidence is key. So you really want to be ready. You're being evaluated for your executive style as much as anything else. So don't wait for your contact to start the discussion. I always say, you ask for the meeting, so you run it. It's your responsibility, okay? And, at the same time, as I say that, I also want to say that you also do need to remain flexible, right? If the chit-chatting goes beyond 2 to 3 minutes, it's fine. But, do your best to get it back on track and be sensitive kind of to what makes sense. So now we're going to move on to a great overview. And using the 20-minute networking formula, you're going to just share a concise overview of your background. Now, I recommend this is really where you pull from that groundwork that you did. You're going to pull from the career narrative that you created. Here are the things that I recommend that you put into that 1-minute overview. You want to answer these questions. Who am I professionally? You're going to be looking at job, title. You're going to be looking at function, companies. So really pull together and ground yourself in an identity. Next, what do I do well? This is when you pull from that blue circle. What are the competencies I have? How have I added value in the past? So you really want to lead with, here's what I do well, or here's the strengths I want to do with leading for, move forward with. And next, you're going to pull from that required desire list, that red circle. So what's important to me? What am I targeting next? The important thing to do here is to practice. So record yourself on your phone, listen to yourself, edit and revise. You want to practice out loud. Don't assume what you think you're going to say in your head is how it's going to sound once it comes out. So take the time to really hone and edit this. It's an important part of cementing that great first impression. Now, once you're one and done, then you can jump into the heart of the meeting, which is really the great discussion that you're going to have. So here's what you'll do here. To prepare for that great discussion, you need to do some research. You need to do your homework. So first of all, you want to take, the one thing I'll say is you never want to ask a question that you can find the answer to online. You want to do your research on the company that the person currently works at, as well as the contact. Now, the discussion part of the 20-minute networking meeting actually consists of 5 questions, 3 that you prepare and 2 that are always going to be the same. So the questions you prepare are likely going to be about the person that you're meeting with, right? Or the company they work for, or questions around their specific industry or function, okay? So doing your research, you need to not only look at the person's company and their LinkedIn bio and the bio on the website or whatever information is generally available about the company or the person, you also want to know what's going on in the world. So you should be prepared to talk about politics, about the business climate, know the market, know the local, regional, national news, okay? As you do this research, you may find that you're getting curious about the person or the company. So use this to be fodder for your questions. All right, now you're going to formulate, I mentioned 3 questions that are going to be based specifically on the person with whom you're meeting. So you've done your research, so you're not asking questions that you could find the answer to already. You want to take advantage of what this person can uniquely offer you. So you want to have thought out inquiries that are specific to your contact and or their company, right? Maybe they're questions that only that person can answer. So the question should be written in 2 parts, an observation and a question. You see me fumbling for my notes, it's because I had an example and I didn't want to lose it here. Let me kind of give you an idea of how you could formulate a question. So I was reading your LinkedIn profile and saw that you did commercial business ops in consumer goods before transitioning to pharmaceuticals. That's an observation. This is actually pulled from a real alum that I worked with. As I look at a similar transition, are there any insights you could share from changing industries? That's your question, right? Here's another one. I noticed we both hold a Six Sigma black belt. Observation. I sort of feel that interest in Six Sigma methodology is waning. I'd love to get your take on that. There's your question, right? You can even follow up with a question. You know, what is your company doing with Six Sigma or something like that, okay? So you might remember the formula I've given you before in my prior webinars on salary and comp around make a statement, ask a question. Same kind of theory. Make an observation, then ask the question. And I love this formula because it gives the listener a heads up. The observation gives the listener a heads up as to where you're going. And it's also showing that you did your homework. And then that question asks for their experience, right? Their expertise, their opinion. So you're engaging in a great discussion. So these first three questions will be in that formula, and they're going to be crafted by you specific to the person with whom you're meeting. And of course, you know, you can reuse questions if you're looking to get kind of multiple points of view on a particular topic. But you really want to plan for each individual meetings and tailor the question to the individual. That's going to make the most of their time and your time. Now, question 4 accomplishes getting referrals. That's one of the goals of networking. So you want to ask the person you're meeting with who else you should be speaking to. So remember, the more people you meet with, the more, you know, the wider your network, the more you get into that hidden job market. So it can be worded simply. Again, I have some examples that I wanted to share. So I only have a couple more questions. First, I wanted to ask if there's anyone else you'd recommend I meet with given my background and objectives, right? Or you could maybe even be a little bit more specific, saying, you know, is there someone on your product management team that I should be talking to, right? Or I know you used to work at Apple. Is there anyone there that I should be talking to? So just ask the question. And these examples are all phrased directly, but they're also courteous. So you really want to pay attention to how you ask. That's what's important. But if you've made a great first impression, if you've had a good discussion so far, if you're managing the meeting well and staying on point, then hopefully that will encourage that person to come up with some referrals for you. And then you have a final question. The last question is, how can I help you? Ask it just like that. Showing that consideration could maybe yield an additional contact, right? Or a contact at all if they've been hesitant to answer your fourth question. And that's gonna widen your network. And this question can accomplish the final goal you have, which is making a new ally in your search who's gonna continue to go to bat for you. Someone who's gonna make introductions on your behalf, who's gonna think about you for project or contract work, who's gonna refer you to people who are hiring when things come across their desk. So sometimes asking this question can take people off guard because they think, oh, I thought I was just gonna help you, right? That's when maybe that prep work that you've done or the discussion that you've had can give you an idea of something that you can offer them in return. So I came up with some examples. How about, you mentioned that you admired Andrew Lowe. Well, I worked with him on my thesis. He was a professor of mine at MIT Sloan. It's been a while, but I'd be happy to make that connection if you'd like. There's something. You could also offer to do something for them, right? So I'm part of a trade association that's planning a conference next fall. If you'd like, I'd be happy to send over a free ticket for you or someone, you know, on your team, right? Think about an interesting article or a podcast you can recommend or a TED Talk that you could send to them. Maybe there's a business book that you could recommend or even bring to them as a token of your appreciation. How great would that be? This whole idea of offering to be of help is a really critical part of this 20-minute networking strategy, but in networking in general. Because when you acquire these allies, then your job search starts to pick up speed. It really starts to move along. So those are the 5 questions that you're going to ask, and you're always going to end on question 5. It allows you to leave with a solid impression. So now you're landing the plane, and you're going to be probably realizing, I'm having a great discussion. We could keep going. It's going to be tempting to keep going because your contact's probably not anticipating that you're really going to end at 20 minutes. But you'll want to honor the time frame you set up and that you laid out. They gave you the gift of time. You're not going to squander it. Okay, so stay on point. So You're just going to say really quickly, thanks for your time. I appreciate it. I'm going to let you get on with your day. All right. Something like quick like that. Thanks so much. You've been so gracious. Now, once you've made it clear the end is near, then you're going to review and confirm any action items and next steps that you've agreed upon. So let them know, what you're going to send them in a follow-up email. If they agree to introduce you to a new contact, let them know. I'll send something that you can easily cut and paste or forward to your contact to make it easier for you. If you've offered to introduce them to somebody, let them know how that's going to happen. So get all those next steps squared away. You're also going to say thank you one final time. I can't overstate how much gratitude can, infuse energy in a job search. When you put your focus on this, right, versus the real need to get a job, then your contacts are going to feel appreciated. They're going to feel like their time was well spent, and that's going to pay off for you. And then you're going to promptly wrap it up. Remember, you don't want a long drawn out goodbye. You really want to keep things crisp. So once the meeting is over, it is your responsibility to follow up promptly. So within 24 hours, you should send a thank you email to the person that you met with, and you should also write a short email, if it's applicable, to the person who introduced you to that contact. This is important because when people do favors for others, they always want to know what the outcome was. And this also, of course, keeps maintaining that relationship that you've created and gives you a reason to reach out. You're maintaining that connection. You're also going to want to go back to that contact tracker and update your notes while they're fresh in your mind. Really make sure you do this. That way, everybody, you stay on point, you're organized, and you can keep things moving forward. And then finally, you're going to make a note about when to follow up with that contact again. You must stay on the radar, and you'll want to touch base with your contacts every so often with an update. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Okay. So hopefully now you all have some new energy around networking meetings and what might be possible with them. The alums I've worked with who've implemented this strategy have told me they've made better, stronger impressions. They've had better discussions. They've formed, better relationships and gotten more referrals. And of course, those things can result in better opportunities that are better suited for you. So let's look at the timeline of all this and what you can expect when you're applying the intelligent networking principles to a job search. So using the process I outlined, what I see is when you're primarily doing a network job search, on average, it takes 6 months. Let me just give you a couple of clarification on that. There's a general guideline. When you're looking at director level roles, it can be from 4 to 8. VP and above can take a little bit longer because, the market's a little smaller at the top. Now, to do this, you're going to want to aim to have at least 2 to 4 meetings a week. And it could take reaching out to 6 to 8 people to get 1 meeting, okay? So that ratio will be much less when you're starting with your first degree connections and those closer ties. But once you get further out and the ties are, weaker or looser, it's going to take more legwork to get 1 meeting. So you're just going to have to experiment with how to feed that pipeline so that you can manage your meetings. Now, with your tracking system, you're going to figure out any ongoing follow-up that's needed with your contacts. I say aim to touch base with them every 6 weeks or so to give them an update on your search. But if you have, meaningful reasons to reach out, if your mutual connection, you've got news on that person, or if you come across information that would be helpful to the person, reach out to them. If your contact information changes, things like that. Ongoing follow-up allows you to stay on the radar because people get busy. They forget about who they meet with, right? And maybe they've heard of opportunities in the last 6 weeks when you've not been in contact with them, and then you come back to mind and they think about it, right? If you don't follow up, you're going to be forgotten. So you do want to keep things going. And we want to stay engaged once you finally do land that job. So let's wrap it up by talking about the final block in that intelligent networking roadmap, which is staying engaged. So for those of you who aren't in a job search, these are the principles you want to be following or the things you want to be doing now and forever for that lifelong career management. So when you've landed, you want to let everybody know, old and new contacts, where you've landed, and you want to, of course, express thanks and gratitude for them helping you get there. You want to continue to stay on the radar. You send these little goodies, the things I've already mentioned, articles, podcasts, books, TED Talks, things that you might want to receive yourself. When you come across something cool, ask yourself, who else would enjoy this, and send it along. It's a great excuse to reach out. And to that point, another great excuse to reach out is the holidays, the new year, people's birthdays or work anniversaries. That's one thing LinkedIn is good at. If you're connected with somebody, it's going to say, it's their work anniversary, or sometimes people put in their birthdays. So use those prompts as excuses to reach out as well. And you want to have a plan for ongoing networking. Now, no longer do you have to conduct these 20-minute efficient meetings. Now it can be coffee or drinks. But you want to plan to just maybe once a month catch up with somebody. Maybe it's even a phone or a Zoom call, just to keep maintaining and nurturing the network that you've so carefully created throughout this prior, networked job search that you've been doing. So I don't even know what time we're at. Hopefully, okay, well, we're getting close. So key takeaways, guys, key takeaways as we're getting to the end. Here's what I want you to know. You need to curate your network. Use that favor test so that you can easily organize and manage your connections when you need to reach out to them. Think about those goals. Simple as air. I had to give you an acronym. Advice, information, referrals, and thereby you'll acquire allies. Know that good networking meetings have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So keep it structured. Be clear about the start and the end of the meeting. And remember, it's your responsibility to run the meeting. And of course, when you manage effective, focused meetings, you're going to get allies that will always help you in the search. And of course, show gratitude and offer to help. Being gracious and generous nurtures a relationship. It's about not about being transactional, it's about being relational and making meaningful connections. So back to the new perspective that I hope I've been able to give you or reframe for you around networking. I hope you'll be able to take what you learned tonight and actually make it a practice and a habit. And I think you'll find when you do that you'll begin to reap benefits throughout your entire career. So I'm going to turn it back over to Greg, and I hope I have time for one question or two.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Bryn.
Yes.
So as a reminder to our participants, you can type in your questions in the Q&A panel in the Zoom interface. We've had a few come in, so I'll just jump right in. So you mentioned, Bryn, that it takes time to conduct a networked job search. And you mentioned at director or VP or C-suite levels. So are the strategies really different the more senior you are? Or is it just that it takes more time?
Well, I think the more senior you are, you can look at engaging retained exec search firms. So those larger search firms that recruit maybe C-level or VP and above level talent. But again, you're going to want to do that groundwork and that preparation. I just cannot say that enough. You want to make sure you're really feeling clear about where you're going, or maybe even you're not even clear about your goals, but you know what you want to be doing, the kind of work that invigorates you, as well as those priorities around your search. So you want to do the groundwork. I would still curate the network in the way I walked through it, and I would still do networking meetings in that way. But when you are senior, then you can kind of extend out to maybe executive search and headhunters that you might know or come across. They're probably going to want to plug and play, right? So if you're looking at doing any sort of transition, that's probably not going to be as helpful. But if you're looking from moving from one, the same title role in the same industry, the same function, that's where it's going to be useful.
Great, thank you, Bryn. We are getting right to the top of the hour, but so I want to be mindful of the time. This was really fantastic. We appreciate your time, and again, just another great program. So thank you for joining us for Sloan Alumni Online. I also want to thank all of our viewers for joining us. To keep this conversation going over social media, please use the hashtag SloanieChat. Following this event, you will receive a survey via email, as well as a link to the recording of this session. So please fill out that survey. Let us know your feedback on this session, as well as our ongoing lineup of webinars. As always, you can reach out to us at sloanalumniionline@mit.edu. So thanks for joining us today. And Bryn, thank you again for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.